In this video, I want to demonstrate tracing a nested loop. Before we do that, I want to remind you the material about nested lists. So here we have an example of a nested list, and that's HR. So what's HR? Well, it's arranged in a funny way, but really it's just a list of lists. So for example, HR0 would just be the first element of HR, which is this list. If you check out, for example, HR2, like so, well, this would be this line. If you want to get at a particular element, so for example, you want to get the heart rate for subject 1 for the condition resting, well, what you can do is you can say HR at 0. What HR at 0 would be is this entry. And then you could say HR at 0 at 1, for example. This would be this 75 because this is element number 1 of this list. And this would be 75. Now, let's say that what I want to do is I want to get a list of the averages for each subject. So each subject, the data for each subject is stored in each column. So this is the data for subject 1, the data for subject 2, data for subject 3, and so on. So I want the average of those, and also the average of those, and also the average of those. So the way I want to do it is I want to store all of them in this list, subject averages, which initially is going to be empty. Now let's go and trace the code that I already wrote. So the first thing is we want to say, okay, so we want to go and compute the average of subject 0, and then the average for subject 1, and so on, up until subject 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's exactly what this is going to do, because the length of HR at 0, that's the length of the first row, which is 5, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we want to go up to but not including 5, that's exactly the number of subjects, right? Because this is subject 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what we have for now is that we're going to repeat this block as many times as there are subjects. So we're going to repeat this block 5 times. And this is correct because we have 5 subjects, 5 columns. Okay, now we can see and we can just look and see by just looking at it what this block does. This block sets the variable s to 0. And what it then does is it sums up all the settings for a particular fixed subject. So let's do one iteration and it'll become clearer in a second. So right now, subject end is 0. If I fix this, so this is now 0. So this is fixed. This is always going to be 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to take s and then we're going to add HR at 0 to it. And then we're going to add HR at 1, 0 to it. And then we're going to add HR at 2, 0 to it. Why? Because we're about to vary setting index. So that's the index of the setting. In other words, the index of the row. This guy is going to be fixed. And we're going to add this entry. So it's going to be this, and then this, and then this, and then this into s. So let's do that. So now s is 0. You could see it here. And now we're going to vary setting index. And we're going to vary it from 0 and up to the length of HR. What's the length of HR? Well, this is just the number of elements in HR, which is the same as the number of rows in HR. So let's do that. So setting index right now is 0, and you can see it here, and it's going to be increasing. Now it's 1, now it's 2, and s is increasing accordingly. Now let's continue up until we reach line 14 for the first time. I'm pressing continue to get to here. And what we have now is we have the sum. So that's the sum of this plus this plus this plus this. And if we divide it by the length of HR by the number of rows, we'll get the average of this column. Let's compute it. Whatever it is, it's 103.25. And now we are going to append this quantity to subject averages. subject averages initially was the empty list. Right now it's still the empty list. It's subject averages like that. It's still the empty list, and it's about to have the average of this column added to it. So let's do that. Here it is. It's a list with one element. We can look it up like this. Now it contains 103.25. We can also just say subject averages like that. And now we're about to do another iteration of the outer loop, of this for loop. So now the only thing that's changed is that subject index right now is going to be 1. So this guy is going to be fixed at 1, and this guy is going to vary as we add this to this to this to this. Let's just press continue. And now we're about to append this quantity, 104.5, so that's the average of those guys, to subject averages. Let's do that. So what subject average is now? Well, subject averages is now 103.25, 104.5, so the average of those guys, and then the average of those guys. After you've finished running the outer loop, this list, subject averages, is going to contain the averages for all the columns, which is what we wanted. The thing to understand here is that, as we saw in the lecture previously during the workshop, and also you can read about it in the write-up, there is nothing really special about nested loops. All nested loops are is loops that happen to be located within loops. You can think about this nested loop as just the outer loop, and then you keep repeating this block with the only thing that's changing is subject index.